I'm not the kind of man who believes in strange lights or prophecies, but what happened to me in the summer of 2025 has left a scar too deep to dismiss. If you're hearing this, understand I'm not trying to convince you, I'm trying to warn you, because something is coming. And 2026 will not be like any other year humanity has seen. I remember the night it began because the air itself felt wrong, like the world was holding its breath. The wind had no sound. Even the crickets were silent. I was in Arizona near the border of New Mexico on a photography trip I'd taken to escape the noise of my collapsing life. My name is Eli Mercer, and this story isn't about my life. It's about the night a being from beyond our world told me the truth about Jesus Christ. At first, it wasn't the sky that caught my attention, but the ground. The desert sand vibrated faintly under my boots, as though something alive was breathing beneath it. I thought it was an earthquake, but there was no tremor, no wind, no sound. Then a low hum rose, deep and melodic, like a note played on an invisible instrument. I turned my camera toward the horizon, and that's when I saw it, a light descending slowly, too controlled to be a meteor, too silent to be a helicopter. It wasn't a crash or a landing, it was a descent of purpose. I froze, my instincts telling me to run, but curiosity glued my feet to the earth. The light grew larger, pulsating in colors I can't describe, like gold melting into silver and bleeding into something beyond visible spectrum. When it touched the desert floor, everything around me, my watch, my car radio, even my heartbeat, seemed to stop. Then the light folded in on itself, collapsing into a human shape. The figure stepped forward, and I swear on my life it looked almost familiar. A tall, luminous being, skin like liquid pearl, eyes deeper than any ocean. No wings, no armor, no grotesque alien features, just a presence that made me feel both naked and known. When it spoke, it wasn't through sound but through thought, and its first words shattered every defense I had. "Do not be afraid, Eli, I come to warn you." I stumbled backward, heart pounding. My mouth moved before my brain could catch up. What are you?" The being tilted its head slightly, like it was studying the concept of language itself. "I am one of many who serve the one your world calls Jesus." I laughed, though it came out more like a choke. "Jesus? You're telling me you're some kind of angel?" The being's expression didn't change. "No. I am not of your heaven. I am not of your hell. I am of his truth." The words hit me with weight, like every syllable carried a gravity of its own. The air buzzed, my camera clicked by itself, taking photos even though my finger wasn't on the trigger. The being stepped closer, and I smelled something like rain mixed with burnt metal. "Eli, the time of division approaches. What is hidden will be unveiled. The world has worshipped his image, but not his essence." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean? Whose essence?" The being's eyes flickered, and in that instant, images poured into my mind, a flood of memories that weren't mine. I saw ancient temples burning, scrolls hidden beneath stone, a council of men rewriting names and stories. I saw light descending upon a man who looked like Jesus, yet older, eternal, radiant beyond comprehension. "Your scriptures are fragments," the being said, its voice overlapping with the visions. "The truth of the Christ extends beyond the earth, beyond matter, beyond the illusion of time." I fell to my knees, gasping. My thoughts were a storm, half faith, half madness. "If you're telling the truth," I whispered, "why me? Why now?" "Because 2026 marks the convergence," the being said, its eyes dimming to a sorrowful glow. "When the lie will be complete and the world will choose who it truly serves." Before I could ask what that meant, the being looked toward the sky. The light around it flared again, and I felt an overwhelming sadness from it, like the grief of something ancient watching its children destroy themselves. Then it turned back to me. There will be others who will claim my form. They will come in light, but serve the shadow. You must discern. My vision blurred, the desert spinning in all directions. I screamed for it not to leave, but it only said one last thing before dissolving into light. Remember the name I give you, Emetel. Speak it only when the heavens burn. The light vanished, and I collapsed on the sand, shaking uncontrollably. My camera was still clicking, though the battery was dead. The desert returned to silence. I thought I had lost my mind until I looked down at my wrist. The cross tattoo I'd gotten years ago as a symbol of faith was glowing faintly, as if something inside it had been awakened. That was the night my life ended as it was. In the following days, I would try to convince myself it was a hallucination brought on by exhaustion or heat stroke. But when I developed the photos, my blood froze. In one of the frames, the being stood beside me, hand extended toward my heart, and written in the sand behind us, glowing faintly, was a single phrase in ancient Hebrew. When translated, it read, "The time of unveiling begins in 2026. Eli didn't sleep for 3 days after that night. The images haunted him like an infection under the skin, spreading every time he closed his eyes. The phrase, "the time of unveiling," replayed in his mind until he began to doubt his sanity. He printed the photograph, the one where the being stood beside him, and stared at it for hours, searching for signs of digital error, lens flare, anything that could explain it. But there was none. The Hebrew inscription wasn't there when he took the shot, yet it was clear, carved into the sand like fire, frozen in place. He called a friend from college, a linguist named Sarah Nolan, who had studied ancient Semitic languages. When she saw the image, her voice trembled. "Where did you find this?" she asked. He lied, saying it was part of a documentary project. She hesitated before replying. That phrase, it's not just Hebrew. It's written in a hybrid form, part Aramaic, part something older. It literally translates to the revealing of what was bound in the heavens. That night, she sent him a message. "Eli, be careful." Some texts linked to that phrase were banned by early church councils. He stared at her words, heart pounding. The next morning, strange things began happening. His phone battery drained within minutes whenever he tried to open the photo. His laptop crashed 3 times. And his reflection, he swore, blinked half a second slower than his actual eyes. That was when fear turned to obsession. He returned to the desert where it all began, armed with nothing but his camera, a notebook, and a cheap motel flashlight. The landscape looked unchanged, yet the silence had a pressure to it, like the air itself remembered. He followed his old footprints until he found the same patch of sand. Kneeling down, he whispered the name the being had given him, Emetel. And instantly, the ground shimmered like heat waves. A low hum filled his ears, then the world seemed to fold in on itself. For a moment he thought he was dying, but what came next was worse. The desert dissolved into darkness, and a blinding image flooded his mind, a vast ocean of stars rotating around a single point of light. In that light, he saw faces, countless human faces, crying, praying, screaming. Among them stood Jesus, but not the Jesus of paintings or cathedrals. His eyes burned like galaxies, and when he spoke, his voice was the sound of every language combined. "They will distort my name to build their kingdoms." Eli gasped, falling backward, clutching his chest. He woke in the sand, trembling. The flashlight had melted beside him. Hours must have passed because dawn was breaking. As he stumbled back to his car, something caught his eye. symbols etched onto a nearby rock, identical to those in the photo. They weren't there before. He photographed them, though a part of him dreaded what he'd find. That afternoon, Sarah called him again, voice frantic. "Eli, I found something in the Nag Hammadi texts. That name you mentioned, Emitel, it appears once in a banned gospel called The Testament of the Watchers. It refers to an envoy of the Son of Man who appears before the end of the 6th cycle." Eli asked what that meant, and she replied, "If the old numerology is right, the 6th cycle ends in 2026. Her words cracked something inside him. The being hadn't just given him a name, it had given him a prophecy. Over the next weeks, Eli became consumed with research. He dove into apocryphal texts, Vatican archives, and digital manuscripts. Each clue pointed to the same conclusion. The Christ of history was only one manifestation of a greater, cosmic presence, the Logos, the Word made flesh, not just once, but across countless worlds. It terrified him. The deeper he searched, the more he felt watched. He noticed black SUVs parked near his street. Emails from unknown addresses appeared in his inbox, filled with corrupted attachments and phrases like "cease inquiry" and "divine operations restricted." Then one evening in late August, someone knocked on his door. It was a man in a dark suit holding a small envelope. "Mr. Mercer," the man said, "we've been informed you're in possession of restricted materials." Eli stammered, pretending not to know what he meant. The man smiled faintly. "You've been touched by something ancient, haven't you?" Eli's stomach turned to ice. "Who are you?" he asked. "Someone who's trying to keep this world from collapsing too soon," the stranger said. "Destroy the photo, forget the name. Whatever spoke to you, it isn't from God." But before Eli could respond, the man turned and walked away. When Eli opened the envelope, it contained only one thing, a page torn from an old Bible, Genesis 6:4, underlined in red ink. There were giants in the earth in those days. That night, Eli dreamt of the being again, only this time it was wounded, its light flickering like a dying flame. "They will silence me," it said, voice echoing like thunder underwater. "But the Son of Man will break their seals. You must speak before the veil closes." When Eli awoke, the message was clear. He was being hunted not just by men, but by something older, something terrified of what he might reveal. And for the first time, he began to wonder if his encounter wasn't random at all, but part of a plan written long before he was born. By September, Eli had lost nearly everything that anchored him to his old life, his job, his friends, even his sleep. He stopped answering calls from Sarah, afraid she'd get dragged into whatever this was. The nights grew louder in his mind. Every hum of electricity, every flicker of light felt like a presence watching him. He began hearing faint whispers when he prayed, soft, mournful voices repeating fragments of scripture that didn't exist in his Bible. One night, as rain fell against the window of his motel room, the whispers turned into a clear voice. It wasn't the aliens. This one was human, weary and desperate. "They have replaced his name," it said. "Find the book of the 7 keys." Eli shot up, drenched in sweat, searching the room. No one was there. He grabbed his Bible and flipped it open at random. His eyes fell on Revelation 5:1. "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a book written within and on the backside, sealed with 7 seals. The voice came again, fainter now. "Not seals, keys." The next morning, Eli drove 6 hours to Santa Fe, to a monastery he'd read about years ago, a place rumored to house forbidden manuscripts confiscated from scholars in the early 1900s. The building sat half buried in red rock, guarded by silence and the scent of burning incense. An old monk named Father Declan met him at the gate. His eyes were cloudy with age, but sharp with something deeper, as though he already knew why Eli had come. "You've seen one of them, haven't you?" he asked. Eli froze. "One of what?" "The messengers," Declan said, voice lowering. "They come rarely, but when they do, the world shifts." He led Eli through a narrow corridor lined with candles. On the walls hung ancient drawings, beings of light descending upon mountains, humans shielding their eyes. "I need to know what they are," Eli said. "What they want?" Declan stopped before a wooden door bound in iron. "They want remembrance," he said softly, "and they fear what men have done in the name of the Christ." Inside was a library filled with dust and sacred quiet. Declan handed Eli a weathered scroll sealed with wax. "This is one of the keys," he whispered. "We've guarded it since the Inquisition. Read it, and you'll see why they warned you." The scroll was written in a language Eli didn't recognize, yet somehow he understood it as he read. It spoke of a celestial covenant, how the Logos took form not once, but countless times across the cosmos to redeem every sentient soul bound to matter. It described the sons of light, emissaries of divine truth, scattered through galaxies, and how some of them fell, seeking dominion instead of service. Or they became the architects of deception, guiding empires, religions, and wars, all in the name of false salvation. Eli felt sick. "You're saying, not all angels serve God?" Declan nodded gravely. "They were not angels as you think. They were civilizations that ascended beyond flesh, some faithful, some corrupt. Humanity is one branch of a tree that spans eternity." Eli backed away, shaking his head. "No, this can't be real. Jesus was human. He lived, died, rose again. And will rise again wherever life calls his name," Declan interrupted. "The Christ is not limited to earth. He is the breath that animates creation." The words pierced Eli's soul. They were beautiful, but terrifying. If true, it meant everything he'd been taught was a fragment of something infinite, and that the being he met was part of that divine network. Declan placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "The Church knows more than it reveals. The Vatican archives hold records of other visitations, beings who came to warn of corruption within the faith itself. They were silenced, labeled demons." "And 2026? Eli asked. "What happens then?" Declan's expression darkened. "The convergence," he whispered. "The moment when the fallen ones attempt to mimic the return of Christ. They will come in light, promising unity, peace, transcendence, but their light will be cold." Eli remembered the aliens' warning. They will come in light, but serve the shadow. A chill ran through him. "How do we tell the difference?" The old monk sighed. "By their fruit, by what they awaken in you, fear or freedom." That night, Eli stayed in a small guest cell within the monastery. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the luminous being, its sorrowful gaze piercing through his mind. Just before dawn, he felt a pressure in the air. The candle by his bedside flickered, and the room filled with a faint hum. Then from the shadows a voice, clear, deep, filled with both grief and power, spoke his name. "Eli." He sat up, heart pounding. The being appeared again, though dimmer now, as if its light was fading. "They are already preparing," it said. "The false dawn will rise before the true one. Remember my words." "What can I do?" Eli pleaded. "How do I stop it?" The being extended a hand, and in its palm appeared a small orb of radiant light. "Carry this within you. It will awaken when the sign appears in the sky." Eli reached out, and the light dissolved into his chest. A searing warmth filled his body, and he collapsed to the floor, gasping. The being's final words echoed in his mind as it vanished. When the sun darkens at noon and the stars move from their places, speak the name I gave you, the veil will tear. When morning came, Eli woke to Father Declan standing over him, pale and trembling. The statue of the Virgin in the chapel, Declan whispered. It wept during the night. Outside, the sunrise was blood red. Eli left the monastery before sunrise, his mind spiraling through questions that felt too heavy for thought. The old monk's final words echoed like thunder in his skull. The false dawn will rise before the true one. He drove for hours through the desert until the mountains faded behind him and the sky turned pale. Every mile felt like drifting farther from reason. But something inside him had changed. The light the being had placed within him pulsed faintly beneath his ribs, not metaphorically, but physically. At first it was a warmth, gentle and rhythmic, but by the time he reached the small town of Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, it had become a pulse that matched his heartbeat. He checked into a roadside motel and spent the day rereading his notes, piecing together every fragment, the scroll, the name Emmett L., the photograph, the phrase, unveiling. By evening he felt drawn outside. The air was thick and heavy, and the horizon glowed with an unnatural hue, almost like lightning trapped inside clouds. Then his phone vibrated. It was a message from Sarah, though she'd been silent for weeks. Eli, they came for me. Don't trust the ones in light. They're not what they say. His blood turned to ice. He called her immediately, but the line rang endlessly before cutting off. Panic seized him. He threw his bag in the car and sped toward her apartment in Albuquerque, a 4-hour drive through darkness. Somewhere along the highway the sky shifted. A brilliant beam of light sliced through the clouds, steady and vertical, like a column connecting heaven and earth. Cars ahead of him stopped, people stepping out to film with their phones. It wasn't lightning. It was too still, too deliberate. And from that beam, figures began descending. Luminescent silhouettes, human in form but impossibly tall. The air trembled as they touched the ground. Eli pulled to the side and watched, heart hammering. The figures spoke in unison, their voices like layered echoes. Do not be afraid. We come in the name of the One. Some people fell to their knees, others ran. One of the beings extended its hand toward a woman who screamed, and instantly her face went blank, expressionless, serene. "She's blessed," someone shouted. "They're angels." But Eli knew that light. It was colder, emptier than what he had seen in the desert. His chest burned, and the warmth inside him began to pulse violently, warning him. He whispered the name Emmett L. under his breath, and the nearest being froze mid-sentence, turning its gaze toward him. Its eyes, silver and hollow, locked on his. "You," it said in a voice that shook the ground. The crowd gasped. Eli stumbled back, clutching his chest. The being stepped forward, and the others followed, moving like mirrored shadows. "You carry the mark of the old order," it said. "The covenant is over." Fear exploded through him, but he couldn't move. Then, from somewhere deep within his consciousness, another voice spoke, familiar, firm, compassionate. "Do not fear them, Eli. They serve the imitation." It was Emmett L. The air around him shimmered, and the cold beings recoiled. The light in their bodies flickered like dying lamps. One of them hissed, "The true light is forbidden here." And just like that, the beam vanished, leaving only darkness and silence. When Eli blinked, the road was empty. Every car, every person gone, as though the scene had been erased from time. He stood there shaking, alone in the desert night. A few minutes later, headlights appeared in the distance, a black SUV, the same kind he'd seen before. It stopped beside him, and two men stepped out, their faces stern but not unkind. "Mr. Mercer," one said, "we need you to come with us." Eli hesitated, ready to run, but the man raised a badge. "We're not who you think. We're from a branch of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Project Magellan. We've been monitoring extraterrestrial transmissions for years, but this is different. You've been contacted, haven't you?" Eli didn't answer. The man sighed. "Listen, what you saw tonight, those beings, showed up in 6 states simultaneously. We intercepted their signal. It's not from space. It's from within Earth's magnetosphere." "You're saying they're not aliens?" Eli asked. "They're something older," the man replied. "And they're using human belief as a weapon." They took him to a facility on the outskirts of Los Alamos. Inside, the walls were lined with monitors displaying live feeds of sky anomalies, ancient symbols, and maps of electromagnetic disturbances. A woman with grey hair and a voice like cold glass introduced herself as Dr. Klein. "You've encountered what we call the Celestials," she said. "They present themselves as divine emissaries. In truth, they are remnants of an ancient intelligence, the same that posed as gods throughout human history. We've traced their influence through the Vatican, through Sumerian texts, through—" She hesitated, eyeing him carefully. "Through the early church." Eli's stomach dropped. "Are you saying they manipulated religion?" Klein nodded slowly. "Religion, governments, wars, everything that keeps humanity divided. But something shifted recently around the time you met your emissary. The pattern changed. It's like they're preparing for a final broadcast." "A broadcast? A manifestation event?" she said. "A global deception." Her words chilled him. Everything the being had warned him about, the convergence, the false dawn, was unfolding. "And if they succeed?" Eli asked. Klein leaned forward. "Then humanity will worship them, believing they've witnessed the return of Christ." Eli sat in stunned silence. For the first time, the scale of what he'd stumbled into felt real, not mythic, not symbolic, but tangible. Outside, thunder rolled over the desert. "We need your help," Klein said. "You've been marked by one of the original messengers. Whatever light is inside you, it's proof that not all of them are corrupted. You might be the only connection we have left to the true source." Eli didn't answer. He just stared at his hands, feeling that faint pulse beneath his ribs and realizing with quiet terror that the countdown to 2026 had already begun. The facility was underground, a maze of cold steel corridors and flickering fluorescent lights that hummed with low tension, as though the air itself knew something catastrophic was coming. Eli had been there for 3 days, isolated from the outside world, fed scraps of information and coffee that tasted of metal. Every room he entered was filled with people who looked haunted: scientists, military officers, linguists, priests, each of them carrying a secret too heavy to speak aloud. On the 4th day, Dr. Klein summoned him to a dimly lit briefing chamber where a holographic map floated above the table. It showed the Earth surrounded by shifting rings of light. "We've tracked the anomaly since the night you saw them," she said. "Every 40 hours the magnetic field shifts by fractions of a degree. These alignments correspond to constellations referenced in the Dead Sea Scrolls, particularly to one called the Crown of the Serpent." Eli frowned. "What does that mean?" Klein zoomed the map closer. "It means something is preparing to enter through the field, and whatever it is, it's using faith as a key." Before he could respond, the door opened, and Father Declan stepped in, his face drawn and weary. "They told me you were here," he said. Eli's chest tightened. How did you get out?" The monastery was raided, Declan replied. Men in black uniforms took everything, the scrolls, the relics, even the candles. They burned the sanctuary. I barely escaped. His voice cracked. Eli, they know about the key. Klein folded her arms. The Vatican has known for centuries, she said, coldly.
I helped bury the truth. Declan shot her a glare. Not all of us serve corruption. The tension in the room thickened like storm air. Klein finally sighed and pointed to the map. Gentlemen, whatever differences you have, they're irrelevant now. This pattern indicates something massive will occur when the Earth aligns with Orion's belt, January the 6th, 2026. We believe that's the beginning of what your visitor called the unveiling. Eli stared at the map, the lights pulsing like a heartbeat. He could almost feel them sinking with the warmth inside his chest. You said they're preparing a broadcast, he murmured. What kind of broadcast? Klein tapped a control, and the screens shifted to display audio spectrums filled with rhythmic pulses. This frequency started transmitting last month, she said.
Encoded messages in a hybrid of ancient and modern languages. Some of our translators say it's a psalm, others say it's a command. Declan leaned closer, listening to the hum. It's a summons, he whispered. They're calling their own. Eli rubbed his temples. If they can communicate like this, how do we fight them? Klein's expression turned grim. We don't fight light with weapons. We fight it with resonance. She handed him a small, glass-like device the size of a pendant. This was reverse-engineered from recovered artifacts in 1977. It reacts to the same frequency you emit when the light inside you activates. We think you can amplify it. Amplify it? Eli asked. Into what? Into truth, she said simply. If the false light manifests through deception, your light might reveal its source. Her words sounded poetic, but hollow. And Eli knew what she wasn't saying. No one had tested it before. That night, lying on the cot in his observation cell, Eli couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the faces of those luminous beings, their eyes hollow, their words twisted echoes of Scripture. Do not be afraid. We come in the name of the One. And Sarah, he still hadn't found her. He'd sent messages through Klein's network, but there was no trace of her anywhere. Just as he began to drift off, a faint vibration spread through the floor. The lights dimmed, the hum of electricity faltered. Then he heard footsteps, measured, deliberate, approaching the locked door. A voice spoke softly. Eli Mercer. He recognized it instantly. Sarah. He rushed to the glass window, heart pounding. She stood there, pale and trembling, eyes glimmering faintly with silver light. Sarah, he whispered. You're alive. She smiled faintly, but something in that smile wasn't human. They showed me the truth, Eli. You've been deceived. The being that came to you, it's one of them, pretending to serve the Christ. No, he said, shaking his head. It warned me about them. That's what it wants you to think, she replied. They're dividing us so we'll resist the ones who bring salvation. The unveiling isn't a deception, it's redemption. He backed away from the door. You're not Sarah. I am, she said, her voice breaking. And I still care about you. But if you don't open your heart, you'll be left behind. Her hand pressed against the glass, and the silver in her veins began to glow. The door's lock clicked open by itself. Eli stumbled back. The warmth in his chest flared violently, casting a burst of golden light across the room. Sarah screamed, staggering backward, her eyes bleeding white light. You've been marked by the false source, she shrieked. Alarms blared. Guards rushed down the corridor. In seconds she was gone, vanished in a blur of silver fire. Klein burst into the room, shouting orders. Containment breach! They found us! Declan grabbed Eli's arm. "The battle's begun," he said. "You can't stay here. They'll use the network to pull you into their frequency." Klein shoved a keycard into Eli's hand. "There's a tunnel beneath level 3. Take it and run. We'll buy you time." "What about you?" he asked. "Go!" she yelled. Eli hesitated only a second before bolting down the corridor, Declan beside him. Behind them, sirens wailed, and the ground shook as a blinding light consumed the facility. The last thing Eli heard before everything went silent was Klein's voice over the intercom. The convergence has started. When he reached the surface, the desert sky was torn open by streaks of light descending from the heavens, and for the first time, Eli understood. 2026 wasn't coming. It had already begun. The night sky was no longer a sky. It was a wound, ripped open, bleeding light. Eli and Father Declan emerged from the tunnel just as the desert erupted in waves of unnatural brilliance. Beams of white and silver slashed across the horizon, forming vast geometric shapes that hovered like living constellations. The air itself seemed alive, vibrating with whispers that weren't carried by wind, but by something deeper. Thought. Declan fell to his knees, clutching his rosary. Kyrie Ellison, Lord have mercy. Eli shielded his eyes.
What is this? Above them, one of the luminous formations began to take shape, a massive ring rotating slowly, etched with symbols that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He could feel it tugging at the warmth inside his chest, as if calling to it. "They've come to finish what they started," Declan murmured, "the crown of the serpent." A sudden burst of light illuminated the desert floor, and from within it descended figures. Tall, radiant, beautiful. The same beings Eli had seen months ago in the sandstorm. But this time, they were not veiled in calm. Their glow was harsher, like lightning that refused to die. One of them stepped forward, its eyes like molten mirrors. "Eli Mercer," it said, voice echoing in every direction. "You carry the resonance, the bridge between faith and flesh." Eli gritted his teeth. "You tricked us."
"You said you came in peace." The being smiled, the gesture too perfect to be human. Peace was never the promise, revelation was. Declan rose shakily, holding up a small silver cross. "Begone, in the name of the true Christ." The being didn't flinch. Instead, the cross melted in Declan's hands, liquefying like ice. He gasped in pain and fell backward, clutching his burned palm. Eli's chest began to glow again, gold battling against silver, his heartbeat sinking with the thunder in the sky. He dropped to his knees, overwhelmed by heat, by memory, by visions of symbols carved into his skin in light. The being stepped closer, its voice like a storm made of reason. "You were chosen to bear the seed of remembrance," it said. "Your kind forgot the covenant long ago. The Creator was not one, he was many. We are fragments of his will. The one you called Jesus was our messenger, but you worshipped the shell, not the message." Eli shouted, "That's a lie." The being tilted its head. "Then why does your light answer ours?" The warmth in Eli's chest pulsed again, but this time it spoke in light. A shock wave of golden energy burst outward, throwing the being several meters back. The others hissed, their forms flickering like static. Declan scrambled to his feet, eyes wide. "Eli, you're resisting them." "I'm not doing it," Eli gasped. It's doing it through me." The air around him shimmered, and for a brief second he saw something. Not the aliens, not the light, but beyond it, a vast consciousness like an ocean of gold, infinite and still. And within it, a voice. "Do not fear the light that blinds, for even shadows serve the truth." When he blinked,
it was gone. The beings began to retreat, dissolving back into streaks of light that vanished into the ring above. The desert grew silent again, Declan collapsed beside him. That was not of man. Eli nodded, trembling. They're not just invaders, Father. They're part of something bigger, and they want to rewrite faith itself. Declan looked toward the burning horizon, where the remnants of the facility flickered like dying stars. Then we can't fight them with theology. We need prophecy. Before Eli could reply, a sharp, rhythmic beeping broke through the night, coming from his pocket. He pulled out the pendant Dr. Klein had given him. It was glowing violently now, projecting coordinates onto the sand. Declan peered closer. What is it? Klein said it would resonate with the truth, Eli whispered. Maybe it's leading us to it. Declan made the sign of the cross. Then we follow it, but tread carefully, son. Every truth has its serpent. As they began walking into the cold desert night, the horizon pulsed once more with silent lightning, and somewhere deep beneath the earth, a frequency awoke, one that hummed with both prayer and machine, like an ancient choir reborn through circuitry. The unveiling had only just begun. The signal led them deeper into the desert, past the skeletal remains of a mining town long forgotten by maps and mercy. The air grew colder with every mile, the stars sharpening into 1,000 unblinking eyes above them. Eli's boots sank into the sand with a soft hiss, each step echoing against the emptiness. The pendant still pulsed in his hand, the light dimming and flaring as though it were alive,
breathing through him. Declan followed close behind, wrapped in his coat, murmuring prayers under his breath that sounded more like confessions than pleas. They walked for hours, the horizon stretching endlessly until the pendant's light began to slow its rhythm. Ahead, a canyon yawned open, dark, deep, and carved by ancient hands. "The Valley of Echoes," Declan said quietly. "The locals speak of voices that answer you here, even when you whisper." Eli's throat was dry. "What kind of voices?" "The kind that shouldn't know your name." They descended the steep rocks in silence, the wind sighing through crevices like a memory. At the bottom, the ground was cold, almost metallic. The pendant's light brightened suddenly, pointing toward a narrow fissure in the canyon wall. Etched around it were strange markings, not quite symbols, not quite letters, glowing faintly as if feeding on the pendant's energy. Eli reached out and touched the stone. Instantly the symbols rearranged themselves, forming an archway of light. Declan gasped, stepping back. "By God!" "No," Eli whispered, staring into the opening. "By something that remembers him differently." They stepped through the arch, and the world shifted. The cave beyond wasn't rock but glass, crystalline walls that reflected endless versions of themselves. At the center stood an enormous circular door made of black metal engraved with the same symbols that had haunted Eli's visions. He felt his chest tighten again, the warmth inside him rising, pulsing in sync with the door. "It knows you," Declan said. Eli nodded slowly. "It's calling." As he approached, the door began to hum, vibrating with a low tone that filled the chamber. The sound wasn't heard. It was felt deep within the spine, as if the bones themselves recognized the frequency. The door split open with a hiss, revealing a vast underground chamber that glowed with soft amber light. Dozens of glass capsules lined the walls, each containing a figure, human, sleeping, suspended in some kind of luminous fluid. "Holy Mother of God," Declan breathed. These are people." "Not just people," Eli said, stepping closer. He looked at their faces, serene, ageless, untouched by time. One looked like a monk, another like a scientist, another like a child. "They're from different centuries." "You mean—" "They've been preserving them." Eli's voice trembled. "Guardians, prophets, witnesses, the ones who saw too much. At the far end of the chamber, a pedestal rose from the floor, and above it floated a sphere of light, golden, alive, spinning with fractal patterns that defied comprehension. As Eli approached, the pendant around his neck shattered, and the light from his chest surged forward, merging with the sphere. The air filled with a deep resonance, and suddenly images burst inside his mind. A desert long before this one, under two suns, a being of radiant gold descending among primitive men, words carved in fire. The word became flesh, but the flesh forgot the word. He saw temples collapsing, scrolls burning, and the same golden being crucified, not on earth, but on another world, under an alien sky. The revelation struck him like lightning. Christ's story was not bound to one planet. The crucifixion was an echo repeated across realms. Declan fell to his knees,
tears streaming down his face. "Dear Lord, what is this place?" Eli's voice was barely a whisper. "It's the archive of the First Covenant. They've been here since before Eden." Suddenly, a voice filled the chamber. Not from the walls, not from the air, but from within their very blood. "The time of silence ends, child of dust. The word must walk again." The sphere began to dissolve, and from its light stepped a figure. Not the alien he'd seen before, but something greater, cloaked in a form both human and divine. Its face shifted like water, sometimes a man, sometimes a woman, sometimes both. Its eyes carried galaxies. Eli stumbled backward, shaking. "Who are you?" The being smiled, and its voice was every language, every prayer ever spoken. "I am the memory you call God, Eli, the echo of the Christ you forgot." Declan screamed, "Blasphemy!" But the being only looked at him with sorrow. "You built temples around my name and buried my truth beneath them. I am not your religion. I am what your soul remembers when silence is complete." Eli fell to his knees, trembling, torn between terror and reverence. "Why show me this? Why now?" The being extended a hand. "Because the cycle closes in 2026. The gates between realms weaken, and those who forged the false light are coming to reclaim their dominion. Humanity must choose to ascend through truth or perish through worship." The chamber began to shake, the capsules flickering as if waking from slumber. Declan grabbed Eli's arm. "We have to leave. This is deception." But Eli couldn't move. The being's eyes locked onto his. "You've already chosen, Eli Mercer. The mark within your heart bears witness.
When the skies turn red over Jerusalem, you will know the word walks again, not in temples, but in man." With that, the light exploded outward, engulfing them. Eli felt himself dissolve, scattered among stars and memories, hearing one final whisper before darkness claimed him. "Tell them what's coming." Then silence. He awoke to the sterile hum of machines and the distant beeping of a monitor. The air smelled like antiseptic and static. When Eli opened his eyes, the ceiling lights blurred into a single white glow, and for a long moment he couldn't tell whether he was still inside the chamber or back in the world of men. A nurse leaned over him, her expression calm but unfamiliar. "Mr. Mercer, you're safe. Try not to move." His throat burned when he tried to speak. "How long?" The words came out dry and broken.
"You were found unconscious on the highway outside Tucson," she said. "It's March 2026. His pulse quickened. March 2026. He'd gone into the desert in September of the previous year. 6 months were missing. "Where's Father Declan?" he asked. The nurse frowned slightly. "There was no one with you, sir. You were alone when they brought you in." Eli sat up despite her protests. Pain shot through his body like knives, but the emptiness in the room hurt worse. The window overlooked the city, but the skyline looked wrong. Towers he didn't remember stood where older buildings should have been, and the sky had an unnatural glow, faintly red even in daylight. The nurse adjusted his IV. "You should rest. The doctor will be here soon." But rest was impossible. Something was off, not just in the city, but in him. When she left,
He turned his hand over and saw faint lines beneath his skin, glowing softly like golden threads. They pulsed with his heartbeat. He pressed his palm to his chest. The warmth was still there, but it had changed, deeper, quieter, like something waiting. That night, sleep never came. He kept hearing a whisper. The same voice from the chamber, faint and distant, saying, "The word walks again." At dawn, he found a folded envelope on the bedside table that hadn't been there before. No name, just a wax seal with an unfamiliar symbol, a cross intersecting a circle of stars. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "We know what you saw. If you wish to survive what's coming, leave Tucson tonight. Head north. The sky will guide you." No signature, no sender. But the wax seal matched the markings he'd seen on the door in the archive. His breath caught. They were watching. He tore out the IV, grabbed his clothes, and left the hospital without looking back. The streets outside were eerily quiet for morning. Billboards displayed strange government advisories about solar anomalies and communication interruptions. The air was heavy with static, and people walked quickly, eyes on the ground. Eli caught a glimpse of himself in a shop window. He looked thinner, older. But what chilled him most was his reflection's eyes, faintly glowing gold. He turned away and started walking. By dusk, he had reached the outskirts of the city. The sky was turning crimson, not like a sunset, but like something bleeding through from beyond. When he looked up, the clouds twisted in slow, geometric motion, forming patterns that made his skin crawl. The voice whispered again, clearer now. "North, the mountain calls." He followed an abandoned road for miles until darkness fell, guided only by the faint glow of his chest. In the distance, thunder rolled, but it didn't sound like weather. It sounded like drums. He found an old diner near the highway and slipped inside. The lights flickered weakly, and a radio behind the counter played static, broken occasionally by fragments of news. Massive power grid failure. Northern states preparing for emergency protocols. Sightings of unidentified aerial. Then silence. A woman appeared from the back, the waitress, or what was left of her. Her eyes were distant, her skin pale under the flickering neon. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly.
"They're searching for you." "Who?" "The ones who woke the sky." She reached under the counter and pulled out a small metallic object, a pendant identical to his, but silver instead of gold. "Father Declan left this for you." Eli froze. "You've seen him?" She nodded slowly. "He passed through 3 days ago. Said you'd come. Said the war begins with the red sky." He took the pendant from her hand. It was cold, humming faintly. "Where did he go?" "North, toward the mountain. He said you'd understand." Eli swallowed hard. "Do you?" The woman smiled sadly. "I don't need to. None of this belongs to us anymore." Then the lights died completely. The radio went silent. Outside, the air began to vibrate with a low hum, like a distant engine. Through the window, Eli saw it, a dark, triangular shape gliding silently above the horizon.
Lights pulsing in slow, deliberate rhythm. The waitress whispered, "They found you." Without another word, Eli bolted into the night. The hum grew louder, almost deafening. His chest burned with light as the pendant in his pocket flared. He ran toward the open desert, his breath ragged, the ground trembling beneath him. When he turned back, the diner was gone, consumed by a wave of white light. Then the voice returned, booming inside his mind. "Run to the mountain, Eli. The word awaits its witness." And in that moment, as the night split open above him, he knew the countdown to revelation had begun. The mountain rose like an open wound against the blood-red sky, jagged and silent, as though the earth itself had torn apart to expose its heart. Eli reached its base by dawn, his clothes torn, his lips cracked, every breath scraping his throat like glass. The world around him no longer felt like the world he had known. The air hummed faintly, charged with invisible electricity, and the birds, if they were still birds, circled soundlessly above, their movements too synchronized, too deliberate. His body felt lighter, but not from relief, from disconnection. It was as if the laws of weight, sound, and time were slowly unraveling around him. The silver pendant in his pocket pulsed once, guiding him toward a narrow path carved into the rock. Etched into its surface were faint glyphs, identical to the ones from the archive. The same language of light. He started climbing. The higher he went, the thinner the air became, and with each step, flashes of memory cut through his mind like lightning. The chamber, the sleeping figures, the being of shifting faces, the word walks again. It echoed in his thoughts until he no longer knew whether he was remembering or being spoken to. By noon, he reached a plateau overlooking an endless sea of sand. There, built into the rock, was a small stone chapel, old, weather-beaten, untouched by time. The door was ajar, inside candles burned, though there was no wind, their flames steady as glass. Father Declan sat before the altar, motionless, his back turned. "Father," Eli's voice broke. The old man didn't respond. When Eli touched his shoulder, Declan slowly turned his head. His eyes were open, but lifeless, empty of everything human. Clutched in his stiff hands was a worn Bible, its pages blackened at the edges. On the wall behind him, scrawled in ash, were the words, "They will come in his name, but their light is not his." Eli's chest tightened. No. He stepped back, trembling, when suddenly the candles flickered blue, their light bending inward. The air grew dense. Then a voice, not Declan's, filled the chapel, resonant and calm. He did not die in vain. He opened the final seal. Eli froze. "Who's there?" The air shimmered, and from it emerged the same radiant being he had seen in the desert. But dimmer now, its light cracked and uneven, as if wounded. "You were warned," it said, "yet you ran from the truth." Eli's anger erupted. "You call this truth? He's dead because of you." The being's expression softened. "He chose to bear witness, as must you. The seals of heaven and earth are breaking. The alignment begins." Alignment? Heaven, earth, and the hidden realms, it said. 3 mirrors of one creation. When they converge, the veil between them will tear. It has begun already. You've seen it. The sky, the cities, the silence between prayers. Eli backed away until his shoulders hit the altar. And what happens when the veil breaks? Revelation, the being said, simply. Not the end, but the remembering. Those who carry the resonance, those marked by the word, will ascend to the original design. The rest will remain bound to the echo. "You mean die?" "No," it whispered. "They will persist, as shadows in the next cycle." Eli's chest glowed brighter now, golden light spilling through his shirt. The being's cracked forms seem to drink it in. Your light strengthens the bridge. You were chosen because you doubt. Doubt sharpens faith, and faith shapes creation. Eli clenched his fists. If this is God's plan, why hide it? Why let the church drown the truth? The being's form flickered. Because men feared freedom more than death, they built temples to contain what cannot be contained. They traded communion for control. And Jesus? Eli asked. Who was he really? The being stepped closer, its face flickering between 1,000 human visages, male, female, child, elder. He was what all of you are, the Creator made flesh. The Christ-light was not his alone, it was the divine memory reborn in form. He remembered first, and through him, others could follow. Eli's voice cracked. So he wasn't just the Son of God. He was the first mirror of the infinite. The being's tone deepened. But the second mirror awakens now, and you bear its reflection. The mountain trembled. Outside, thunder rolled, though no clouds moved. The being turned toward the window.
Its light flickering violently. They are here! Eli rushed to the doorway and froze. The horizon was no longer red. It was black, devoured by a wave of shimmering silver shapes descending from the clouds. Thousands of them, ships or angels or something between both. The air vibrated with an otherworldly harmony that made his bones ache. The being inside the chapel lowered its head. The false light returns to claim its dominion. They will speak his name. They will promise deliverance, but they come to enslave the soul. Eli turned back. What do I do? Remember, the being said. When the skies turn white and the world kneels, do not bow. The true Christ does not return in clouds. He awakens within. Then its form began to collapse, disintegrating into threads of light that swirled into the open air.
A single whisper remained. When the trumpet sounds from within your chest, speak the word. The candles went out. Eli was alone, his heart glowing in the darkness, the sound of the sky splitting open above him. The sky broke open like glass. Eli stumbled out of the chapel as a blinding light flooded the mountain. The world below had turned silver, rivers of molten radiance pouring through the valleys, swallowing cities, oceans, entire continents. Above, vast ships drifted through the clouds like silent seraphs, their forms shifting between technology and being, machine and spirit. 1,000 voices echoed in unison from the heavens, serene and commanding. Do not be afraid, the kingdom has come. The words poured into every mind on earth. Eli fell to his knees, clutching his head as waves of thought invaded his skull. Billions of human prayers, screams, confessions, all collapsing into one unbearable chorus. He saw visions of people everywhere dropping to their knees, reaching up in awe as the radiant figures descended. Beings of immaculate beauty, their faces too perfect, their eyes too empty. The same image appeared on every screen, every sky, every heart, the return of the Christ light. But Eli felt it instantly, the lie pulsing beneath the splendor. The warmth in his chest flared, golden against the cold silver descending from the heavens. No, he whispered, this isn't him. A voice rang across the mountains, amplified through the clouds. Humanity, your suffering ends. The age of flesh is over. The divine light welcomes you home. The air shimmered, and a colossal figure emerged from the heart of the descending fleet, a being taller than mountains, robed in blinding white, its face veiled by light, so fierce it burned shadows into the ground. Around it, the sky bent inward, a false halo forming over the world. The people below wept, worshipped, surrendered. "Behold your Saviour," the voice said, "the Word made flesh once more." Eli's chest burned hotter, the pain almost unbearable. He fell forward, screaming as golden fire spilled from his heart, carving symbols into the ground around him, the same ancient glyphs from the archive. The mountain shook violently. In the distance, he saw a column of light rising from the earth's core, piercing the false heavens above. For a moment, time itself fractured, and he saw both realities overlapping, one of silver control and one of gold remembrance. Then another voice spoke, quieter, within him. "Do not look to the sky, look within." He closed his eyes, trembling. "Who are you?" "The Word that was with God, and is God, and lives in you." A surge of light erupted from his chest, blasting outward. The ground around him turned to glass, the chapel disintegrating into dust. He hovered above the mountain now, suspended in golden radiance, facing the colossal false Christ, descending from the clouds. Its voice thundered, "You resist divinity? You deny your own salvation?" Eli's voice, carried by something greater than his lungs, answered, "You are not salvation, you are the imitation of it." The being's form twisted, its perfect visage fracturing into a storm of faces. Angels, priests, politicians, all wearing the same hollow smile. "We gave your kind faith," it hissed. "We gave you order." "And you caged the truth," Eli said, his voice now resonant, layered with countless echoes. "You enslaved the image of God to your own reflection." The false light lunged forward, its radiance scorching the horizon. Eli raised his hands instinctively, and the golden fire within him burst outward, clashing with the silver blaze. For miles the desert lit up brighter than the sun, two lights battling, one born of control, the other of remembrance. The shockwave leveled mountains, split clouds, silenced the world. In the midst of the blinding chaos, Eli saw glimpses of humanity across the globe, millions falling before the silver light, but others suddenly awakening, their hearts glowing gold. Mothers, children, strangers, all beginning to shine from within. They looked up, not at the sky, but inward. The awakening spread like fire through dry grass. The silver began to falter. The false Christ screamed, its voice fracturing into static. "You cannot win. They believe in me." Eli stepped forward through the storm of light, each step leaving trails of flame. "Then I will remind them who they are." He pressed his palm against his heart and whispered the words that came not from memory, but from revelation itself. "The kingdom of God is within you." The world exploded in silence. The sky turned black, then gold, then nothing. For a heartbeat that lasted an eternity, there was no earth, no stars, no form, only consciousness. In that void, Eli saw everything: the first breath of creation, the birth of light, the fall, the promise, the cross, on 1,000 worlds. He understood then that salvation was not a rescue from darkness, but the remembrance that the light had never left. When he opened his eyes again, he stood in a quiet field, bathed in morning sun. The sky was blue, truly blue, for the first time in years. The air smelled of rain. In the distance, people were walking, dazed but alive, staring at their hands that glowed faintly with golden warmth. The ships were gone. The false heavens had collapsed. Eli looked down at his chest. The glow was fading. He smiled faintly. "So this is how it ends." A soft voice behind him said, "No, Eli, this is how it begins." He turned, and there, standing among the grass, was the being of light once more. But this time it wore a familiar face, his own. "Who are you now?" Eli whispered. "I am you," the being said gently. The word fulfilled. The Son realized in the many, the Christ awakened. Eli felt tears burn his eyes. What happens next? The being smiled, looking toward the horizon where golden light met the blue. Now humanity must learn to live without worship and with remembrance. As the figure faded into the morning sun, Eli stood alone, the wind brushing through the grass. Somewhere far away, a child laughed, and the world began again. And in that quiet rebirth, the final truth echoed through every soul that could still hear it. Jesus never left. He became us,